Grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life features stories to inspire and motivate you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Visit cyacyl.com.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. Perhaps the number one response to the question, what do you want in life, is to be happy. And yet, in our pursuit of happiness, we often lose our way. We allow the economy, job stresses, relationship breakdowns, family concerns, and health issues to make happiness a distant afterthought. We become so engulfed in just surviving that we forget how to be happy. Today's guest, Gabrielle Bernstein, has been dubbed the go-to-happiness guru for spiritual seekers worldwide. Author of the books Add More Into Your Life, Spirit Junkie, and the new May Cause Miracles, Gabrielle is teaching people how to help themselves become happy. She's co-founded the Women's Entrepreneurial Network and is the founder of the social networking site herfuture.com. Gabrielle's on the Forbes list of 20 best branded women. She has a weekly radio show on Hay House Radio and has been featured in media outlets such as the New York Times, Marie Claire, People, The Wall Street Journal, CNN, Fox & Friends, and Oprah Radio. She's a regular contributor for the Huffington Post, NaturalHealth, and Beliefnet, among others. Welcome, Gabrielle. Thanks for joining us today.
It's wonderful to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Gabrielle, we talk about being happy, and to me it should be such an innate thing. What do you think is happening to us today that we can't find our happiness?
I think that a lot of people are looking for happiness in a lot of the wrong places. They're often looking for happiness outside of themselves, in their credentials or in their romantic relationships or in their body image. And that's where people get really tripped up, because what we really need to be doing is looking for happiness from an internal condition, not from an external condition.
You know, it's interesting that you said that. The other evening, I was a speaker at a divorce recovery group, and before I went on, the leader played the song Bruno Mars, Just the Way You Are, and she got up and she said, oh, you know, I know we're all looking for someone to sing this to us. And when I got up, I said, how about we look in the mirror and we sing that to ourselves?
Right on. That sounds great.
Yeah, but you're right. We're always looking to someone else to complete us, to validate us, to give us the happiness, and we've forgotten how to do it ourselves.
Absolutely. It's really, we have to recognize that our happiness is a choice that we make, and it's going to have to come from a very daily ritualistic practice of turning inward and having moments like you suggested of singing to ourselves in the mirror, but really making a conscious decision to choose happiness over the negativity that we can so easily pick up on.
I read about your past and that this was really a very long road for you to get where you are right now. You once battled your own demons, addictions to food and drugs. Tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you get to where you are right now?
Well, much like what we were just saying, there was a period in my life when I was really looking for my happiness in all the wrong places, and I was looking for my self-worth and my peace and my serenity in my outside circumstances, like we just suggested. And for many people, you'll know that that doesn't work, and eventually you'll come to some kind of bottom. And that was the case for me. I was really searching really hard and far. And finally, by the time I was 25, I actually was very young when I hit my bottom. I had this quarter-life crisis where I was like looking at my life thinking, this isn't working, this is not flowing, I am not happy. And at that point in time, I had to say, I just did a prayer on October 2nd of 2005, and I prayed for a miracle. I prayed for a shift in my perspective. And the following morning, I woke up, and I had a very loud, authoritative voice speak internally, and that voice of my intuition spoke up and said, get clean, and you will live a life beyond your wildest dreams. And so I've been sober since that day. I have been on a very powerful journey of self-reflection and spirituality and reclaiming my sense of peace. This has been 7 years now that I've been on that path, and not only as a student of spirituality, but very quickly became a teacher, because often when we are given the gifts of personal growth, we very, very loudly hear that intuitive voice that says it's time to share these messages. And so that's been my experience. Just through my own personal experience and personal development, I have been guided to teach others to do the same.
Gabrielle, you followed your intuition and you found your strength in a situation that many people would say leaves them powerless. So if people are in a situation that they feel they're powerless, how can they find the strength to empower themselves?
The first step is really just to be willing to do it, because so many people find that they can't make change, but they can't make the change because they're not willing to make the change. So the power that we do have is our willingness to change. And when we surrender to that slight willingness, that's when we begin to receive all that we need. The books fall off the shelf, the coaches show up, the therapists show up, the support groups show up. But that help will not come unless you open up your psychic capacity to receive it. And you can open up that capacity to receive just through the slightest willingness. So you can begin today by just saying a daily prayer of, I'm willing to have guidance, I'm willing to see things differently.
When you're on that path and you have the willingness to make the changes, how were you able to eliminate those negative voices? Because I know that sometimes we have so much positive and we're doing the right things, but you have that one voice, that one person that said, you're stupid, or you're never going to be able to do it, or you're making a fool of yourself. How can you get past that?
Well, there are plenty of people that are going to resist your growth. And there's a lot of, not only outside voices, but your own internal voice that's going to say, you can't do this, nice try, right? Or who are you to be happy, right? And so if the work is really one day at a time, forgiving those fear-based voices and reclaiming your faith in that loving voice. And this takes a real steadfast commitment. And I can speak for myself, but after 7 years of being a student of this type of work and being a teacher, I still have to practice these principles all the time and continuously remind myself it's okay, remind myself I have enough, remind myself that there's more for me to learn.
Glad you said that, because I think people often believe that once you make that change that you spoke about, that's it, you're done, everything's great, and they don't realize that it's a daily battle and a constant conscious decision.
It's a daily exercise, and life is really our classroom, and that these experiences are our daily assignments to grow more.
Gabrielle, you believe that the 3 key components to a miraculous life are gratitude, forgiveness, and love. Why do you think that those are the 3 most important elements?
Well, with gratitude, we have to always be looking at what we do have rather than focusing on what we don't. And when we focus on what we do have, we create more of what we want. And that is where gratitude really comes in. And so my work focusing specifically on being grateful for everything that I have in my life really keeps me centered and keeps me focused on the good stuff. And that's a major practice that is beneficial to everyone. With regard to forgiveness, I believe that forgiveness is really the bedrock of a spiritual practice. And so it's really important that we keep forgiveness at the forefront and begin and really, really stay connected to what that forgiveness process can do for us. It really sets us free and just opens our heart to receive more in our lives. The next piece, we were talking about forgiveness, gratitude, and love. And the final piece is love. And love really is the state of mind that we all must tune into and dwell in order to live a happy life. And we all have the capacity to live in a loving mindset. We just forget. And so the work that I'm here to do is help people reclaim that loving perspective, one thought at a time.
I think that's a great place for us to take a break for this week's Good Life Tips. Stay with us for information to help you make the positive life changes that we talk about on the show. Welcome back to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman, and our guest today is Gabrielle Bernstein, author of the new book, May Cause Miracles. In your book, you talk about a 6-week program of tiny shifts, and the first week you focus on fear. Why does fear block us so much from achieving what it is we want to accomplish in our lives?
Well, fear is really the opposite of that loving place that we want to dwell in, that we were just speaking about before the break. Fear is the voice that holds us back and keeps us small and keeps us disconnected from our real, genuine truth, which is that we have the capacity to live a life beyond our wildest dreams. And when we get into those fear-based belief systems, we start to hook into an illusion, this illusory world that says, I can't, I'm not good enough, I don't have enough. And those illusions are what keep us stuck and small and keep us held back in many, many ways. And they keep us stuck in bad relationships. They keep us really stuck in that hamster wheel of negativity and disconnect. And so our work is really about relinquishing those fears and reclaiming that loving presence within.
Fear is really nothing more than false evidence appearing real.
Right, exactly. What I like is F everything and run.
I think I like that one better. What I usually say about fear is that I have tried to eliminate the word failure in my life. I look at everything as a learning opportunity. And when you get rid of that notion of failure, there really is nothing to fear because everything teaches you something. And when you make that tiny shift that you talk about all the time, just making these little shifts in the way that you look at things, there really is nothing to be afraid of. And that's really worked very well in my life.
Yes, absolutely. I absolutely agree.
In the second week, you talk about self-love. And I mentioned earlier about singing in the mirror, you're, just the way you are, you're beautiful. Why is self-love so important in our lives?
Well, if we're not going to love ourselves, how can we expect somebody else to love us? So my feeling is that we need to be really, really committed to self-love and really committed to claiming that presence that we want to experience from others. If we want others to give love to us, we must be putting that self-love towards ourselves. And that comes with a daily practice, that comes with a commitment to a peaceful state, that comes with a lot of random acts of self-care and really genuinely taking care of yourself in a loving way. Self-love takes time, but it's really worth it.
And the next week you deal with self-sabotage issues. And I know that this is something that I've always dealt with because it was something I never even realized until I interviewed Dr. Gay Hendricks. And he talked about how we have this threshold of pleasure that we'll only allow ourselves to have. And we don't even realize it, that literally if you start to feel too good, you do things unconsciously to sabotage yourself. And that's one thing that I realized I do in my life. But you talk about self-sabotage being a root cause of issues with our food and body or self-esteem, emotional eating. How does that impact us?
Well, self-sabotage is just a result of the constant disconnect. So the more frequently that we disconnect from from our loving presence, the more we sabotage ourselves in different ways. And so I think that our work is really about learning how to begin to get a practice together of really claiming that place of peace so that we don't go into those negative spirals of reiterating those negative patterns over and over. And they're really just patterns. And so I think our work is really to begin to create the pattern of more love rather than the pattern of more negativity.
And how can we apply that to emotional eating specifically? Because that's a big issue for a lot of people that contact me.
Well, I think a big part of emotional eating is that we have to recognize that we're using food to anesthetize this internal discomfort. And so the work is really about getting to the root cause of the condition. What is it underneath the problem that is really keeping you held back and keeping you in that old place? And that food, the issue around food is really that food is being used as a drug to cover up from those uncomfortable feelings. And so our work is to really settle into what is it that we want to feel and what is it that we need to heal. And that requires a tremendous amount of self-reflection, and that's where your guides will come in, whether it be through a 12-step program, whether it will be through a book, whether it will be through a teacher that you find or a therapist that you work with, that there's deep inner work that needs to go on before you can overcome the food issues.
Now, the next week in your program deals with fear of romance. How do you apply eliminating fear to a romantic relationship? What are your steps that you offer?
With romantic relationships, it's much similar to all other fears, which is that we first have to recognize how we have been acting and how we have been holding ourselves in these negative positions. And so with romantic relationships, one of the greatest things we can do is start to recognize how we have made our romantic partner separate from us and how we've begun to see them as more special or different or put them on a pedestal. Because when we do this, that's when we really disconnect ourselves from the relationship and start to create an energy of separation. And that energy of separation is absolutely one of the ways that we really, really get held back and play small.
Next, you deal with finances. And recently, Kate Northrup was a guest on the show. And we spoke about the connection between our emotional and spiritual well-being and our financial freedom. How is it that you say we should eliminate blocks to financial gain?
Well, one of the greatest things that we can do with regard to reclaiming our financial abundance is to make sure that we're believing in our abundance. Because the greatest block to having a financial freedom in finance is really because we don't believe we're worthy of it. There's all this old stuff that comes up for people around how they've been brought up, what they've been taught to believe in, and those old belief systems are what really keep us held back and small in all of these different circumstances. And so we need to clean up the belief systems from our past in order to reclaim an abundant future. And so that abundance has to come from, once again, much like the relationship stuff, much like the food stuff, cleaning up the history. Because the history is what keeps us really stuck in the present, because we keep bringing those fear-based projections from the past and bringing them into the future. So our work is really about relinquishing those fears.
And last, you talk about the importance of giving back, giving of ourselves. Why is that the final component in this program?
Well, there's a really beautiful line. It's a great quote that Aung San Suu Kyi said, which is, when you're feeling helpless, help someone. And so, first of all, the people of this world need more help now than ever. And this is obviously a very difficult time for many people. And so one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves and the world is to be of service to others. And so that would be my greatest suggestion to anyone who is really looking to make themselves have an immediate shift from feeling helpless to feeling more positive and loving, is to help someone else.
Obviously, doing any one of these steps of your program would have an impact on our lives, but why do you recommend doing all 6?
Well, what I want to see is people have different hang-ups in different areas. So I've written this book in a way so that it can address all different kinds of problems that different people are addressing and feeling. But that also people may think, oh, I'm completely together in this area of my life. But once they start to do the work, they can start to uncover how things may not have been as shiny as they thought they would be. And so it lets us really take a magnifying glass at all the corners of our life and really identify how we may have been playing small. And this book really holds the reader accountable to show up for those situations and really reclaim a really important, empowering, and happy way of being.
Where can our listeners go to get more information about you and your new book, May Cause Miracles?
They can find everything at gabbyb.tv.
So that's gabbyb.tv. And as always, our listeners can visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on our site, listen to past shows as podcasts, read the digital magazine, take part in our book club, sign up for our mailing list, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Before we run out of time, what would be the one thing that you would like our listeners to remember from this interview?
I would love for people to be able to walk away with that willingness to see things differently. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, that the slightest willingness is all we need to really experience change. And so my hope and my intention for people is to listen to the show and say, I really do want to see things differently. Now I'm just going to begin a 30-day practice of claiming my willingness, committing to willingness, and one day at a time just saying, I'm willing to see things differently.
The book is May Cause Miracles by Gabrielle Bernstein. Gabrielle, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I think that your book will really help us to make those tiny shifts. It's not a major overhaul, it's tiny shifts that can, as you say, cause miracles. So thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
This is Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.